The grand ballroom of Zetheria was no longer just a place of music and ceremony. It had become a stage for something entirely new, a place where old rules could be questioned and hearts could be opened. After the moment of silence, the nobles felt the weight of change pressing upon them. Some resisted, clinging to centuries of tradition, while others watched with awe, curiosity, and a budding sense of admiration for the human who dared to defy expectation with calm grace. Princess Lyra stood beside Ethan, her hand brushing against his as they moved slowly through the room. Her eyes sparkled and her posture had shifted. No longer reserved and tense, she now radiated confidence and warmth. For the first time in her life, she felt completely free to be herself, without fear of judgment or reprisal. Ethan's presence was a quiet force, like a river cutting through solid stone, shaping the landscape of the court without aggression or demand. He did not raise his voice, nor did he flaunt any power. He simply treated Lyra as an equal, spoke with honesty, and moved with calm assurance. And that, the nobles realized, was more powerful than any rank, weapon, or title they had ever known. The whispers among the crowd had grown louder, but the tone had changed. They were no longer filled with fear or disdain. Instead, some voices carried admiration. "He moves with dignity," one noble murmured, "and the princess, she seems happier than I have ever seen her." Others were less willing to accept the change. Lord Xylar, still fuming from the earlier confrontation, muttered to his companions, "This human is dangerous. He undermines centuries of order. If the princess is influenced by him, what will happen to our customs?" But even Xylar could not deny the truth he saw. Lyra's demeanor had shifted completely. She laughed freely, spoke with warmth, and moved as if the weight of expectation had been lifted. She was no longer just a figurehead to be admired from afar. She was alive, radiant, and unafraid. Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. "I never imagined I could feel like this," she said softly. "I always thought my life would be measured by rules, expectations, and appearances. But with you, it feels different, real." Ethan smiled, his gaze steady. "That is the way humans often live," he said. "We are not bound by the same rules as your court. We follow what feels true to us. And courage, honesty, and kindness, those are what matter most." Lyra felt a thrill at his words. It was a revelation she had never considered. All her life, she had measured herself by obedience, perfection, and appearances, but now she realized that true strength lay not in following rules blindly, but in living honestly and bravely, even when others doubted you. Encouraged by Ethan's presence, Lyra began to speak more openly to the nobles around her. She asked questions, laughed with curiosity, and even challenged some minor customs in ways that were bold yet respectful. Each action, no matter how small, sent ripples of change through the ballroom. Some nobles frowned, clinging to tradition, but others leaned in, intrigued by the possibility that they too could be more than the roles they had been assigned. Ethan noticed the subtle reactions of the nobles and offered guidance in small, gentle ways. He did not lecture or command, but his calm confidence encouraged others to think for themselves. His presence suggested that differences were not weaknesses, and that courage and integrity could inspire change without force. One noble, Lady Sereth, approached cautiously. I do not understand," she said quietly. "Humans are supposed to be fragile, weak, and unpredictable. Yet, he moves with strength, and the princess, she responds with trust." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Strength is not always measured by power or skill," he said. "Sometimes it is measured by honesty, courage, and the willingness to connect with others. That is true strength, and it is often underestimated." Lady Sereth's eyes widened as she considered his words. For the first time, she began to question the assumptions she had been taught since birth. Perhaps humans were not so weak. Perhaps they possessed qualities that the court had long ignored or undervalued. And perhaps, in seeing the princess smile and laugh with Ethan, she had glimpsed a truth that transcended species and tradition. Meanwhile, Lyra's laughter rang through the ballroom like a bell of freedom. Nobles who had been rigid and fearful found themselves drawn to her energy, unable to resist the warmth she radiated. She spoke openly, not as a princess constrained by expectations, but as a person exploring what it meant to live fully, to feel deeply, and to trust. Tavrik, watching from a distance, could hardly believe the transformation. "Your Highness," he said gently, "you are different, more alive than ever." Lyra smiled at him, her eyes sparkling. "I am different, Tavrik, and it feels wonderful. I cannot explain it fully, but it feels real, and I owe it to him, the human who has shown me that being true to myself is more powerful than any rule." The room seemed to respond to her words. Even the nobles who had resisted the human's presence could not ignore the change in the princess. Some lowered their heads in thought, questioning traditions they had never dared to challenge. Others watched silently, curious to see what would come next. Ethan remained beside Lyra, guiding her gently, speaking quietly, and offering subtle encouragement. "The court is beginning to see," he whispered. "They may not understand fully, but they are beginning to realize that courage and honesty matter more than rank or species." Lyra nodded. "It is remarkable," she said softly. "And it makes me feel hopeful. Perhaps we can change more than just tonight. Perhaps we can change how people see each other, how they think about humans, about differences, about courage." Ethan smiled, proud yet humble. "Change begins with a single step," he said, "and sometimes all it takes is one person willing to act with honesty, kindness, and courage." Encouraged by this thought, Lyra began to speak to the nobles around her, asking them about their hopes, their fears, and their ideas for the future. She listened with genuine interest, laughed with delight at their stories, and offered insights that were thoughtful and kind. Slowly, the ballroom transformed from a space of rigid tradition into a space of dialogue, curiosity, and possibility. Even Lord Xylar, who had opposed Ethan so strongly, found himself reconsidering. He watched quietly, noticing how the human moved with respect, spoke with honesty, and inspired not only Lyra but also the other nobles. Perhaps, he thought grudgingly, there was more to humans than the court had believed. Perhaps they could teach lessons in courage, patience, and integrity that no alien tradition could match. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had spent so long hiding her true self, following rules, and suppressing her feelings. But now, standing with Ethan, she felt alive in a way that was exhilarating and profound. The human's presence had unlocked a part of her heart that she had long ignored, the part that longed for freedom, trust, and connection. As the night continued, Lyra and Ethan moved together, speaking to nobles, sharing laughter, and demonstrating the power of simple, genuine connection. Each interaction sent ripples through the ballroom, challenging assumptions, opening minds, and inspiring courage. The human's presence was not a threat. It was a catalyst for growth, understanding, and hope. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The nobles no longer whispered in fear or suspicion. Many spoke with admiration and curiosity, acknowledging the strength, courage, and wisdom they had witnessed. Some even approached Ethan, cautiously at first, to ask questions and seek understanding. Lyra looked around at the transformed ballroom and felt a sense of triumph, not for herself but for the possibilities that lay ahead. With courage, honesty, and the willingness to connect, she had helped create a space where old rules could be questioned and new ideas could take root. And she knew that Ethan, the human who had entered her life so unexpectedly, was the reason this change had begun. She turned to him, her eyes bright. "Tonight, we have done something remarkable," she said softly. "Not just for us, but for everyone here. Perhaps they will begin to see humans differently, and perhaps they will see themselves differently too." Ethan nodded, his smile gentle and proud. "It is only the beginning," he said. "Change takes time, but tonight we have shown what is possible, and that is always a powerful start." Lyra's heart swelled with hope and determination. She realized that courage was not about defiance alone, nor was strength measured by power. True courage was in being honest, kind, and willing to connect with others, even when it was risky. And true strength was in using that courage to inspire change, to open hearts and to challenge assumptions that had stood for centuries. The ballroom, once a place of rigid tradition and expectation, now hummed with possibility. Nobles whispered, observed, and reflected. Some questioned old rules, some admired the human's courage, and some simply watched in wonder. But all had witnessed something extraordinary, a princess who had found her voice, a human who had shown courage without arrogance, and a connection that had begun to break the chains of tradition. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment and the promise it carried. She knew that the night was far from over, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready for whatever came next. With Ethan by her side, she understood that courage, honesty, and connection could. The grand ballroom of Zetheria was alive in a way it had never been before. The air shimmered not just from the crystal chandeliers but from the subtle energy of change. Noble voices no longer carried whispers of fear or suspicion. Instead, they spoke with curiosity, admiration, and cautious hope. Princess Lyra and the human Ethan had transformed the evening from a simple royal ball into a living testament of courage, honesty, and connection. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had spent countless years confined by rules, tradition, and expectation, her life measured by ceremony and propriety. Yet tonight, standing beside Ethan, she had discovered something far more powerful: freedom. Not just the freedom to act, but the freedom to feel, to trust, and to inspire. She realized that strength was not measured by titles or protocol, but by courage, empathy, and the willingness to see the truth in others. Ethan's presence was as calm and steady as ever, his human simplicity bringing clarity and balance to the otherwise complex and ornate ballroom. He had not sought recognition or praise. He had simply been himself, honest, respectful, courageous, and in doing so he had shifted the course of the entire court. The nobles moved around them with a mixture of awe and contemplation. Some, like Lady Sereth, approached cautiously, eager to understand the human who had changed the princess and indirectly their world. "I never thought humans could carry such dignity," she whispered to her companion. "And yet, here we are witnessing it." Others, however, remained skeptical. Lord Xylar still scowled, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly as he observed Ethan and Lyra. "I do not trust this human," he muttered. "He is unusual, too bold. Our traditions exist for a reason." But even Xylar could not deny the truth he saw unfolding. Lyra's energy, her laughter, and her confidence radiated power far beyond any ritual or expectation. And Ethan, with his calm wisdom and quiet strength, had created a presence that could not be ignored. Lyra turned to him, her eyes bright with excitement and determination. "Tonight, we have done something remarkable," she said softly. "Not just for us, but for everyone here. Perhaps they will begin to see humans differently. Perhaps they will see themselves differently, too." Ethan nodded, his smile warm and reassuring. "It is only the beginning," he said. "Change takes time. But tonight has shown what is possible when courage and honesty lead the way." As they spoke, the music shifted once more. The musicians, inspired by the human princess connection, played a melody that was at once traditional and fresh. It carried warmth, hope, and an openness that reflected the mood of the room. Some nobles even began to dance again, tentatively at first, following Lyra's lead rather than strict protocol. Laughter and soft conversation filled the room, blending with the music in a way that felt natural, joyful, and alive. Lyra felt a surge of pride and joy. She had helped create a moment where the rigid walls of tradition began to crack, revealing a space for understanding, curiosity, and growth. And she knew that this change was not limited to one night. It could extend far beyond the palace walls. Humans, once seen as fragile and insignificant, could now be recognized for their courage, empathy, and the power of their presence. Ethan offered his hand once more, inviting Lyra to step toward the balcony. Together they moved with a simple grace, pausing to observe the transformed ballroom. The nobles were still talking and dancing, some with admiration, some with curiosity, and some with hesitant acceptance. "Look at them," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "They are beginning to understand." Perhaps they will carry this forward. Perhaps they will remember that courage and honesty matter more than tradition alone. Ethan smiled. Yes, Lyra, and the best part is, this change does not belong to us alone. It belongs to everyone willing to see the truth and act with courage. They paused at the balcony, gazing out over the city of Zetheria. The lights below twinkled like stars, reflecting the glittering skyline of towers and bridges, each one a symbol of the kingdom's history. And yet tonight history felt alive, flexible, and capable of transformation. Lyra took a deep breath. I have spent so long feeling alone, she admitted softly. But tonight, I do not feel lonely anymore. I feel understood, seen, and strong. And I owe it to you, Ethan. You have shown me something I never imagined possible. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and warm. You found that courage within yourself, Lyra, he said. I only helped you see it. That strength was always yours. A gentle hush fell over the ballroom again. Even the skeptical nobles could sense the quiet power of their bond. It was not a display of arrogance or dominance, but a simple and profound truth. Two beings, different in species and culture, could connect, understand, and inspire. The room seemed to hold its breath, recognizing that what had begun tonight was far greater than any ceremony or tradition. Tavrik approached. His expression softened with awe. Your Highness, he said, his voice quiet, you have changed tonight. Not just yourself, but the entire court. I have never seen anything like it. Lyra smiled at him, her confidence shining. It is only the beginning, Tavrik. There is much work to do, but tonight has shown that change is possible. And sometimes change begins with something as simple as honesty, courage, and connection. Ethan nodded. Exactly. And humans, despite what others may think, can be part of that change. We may be different, but our differences are not weaknesses. They are strengths. The nobles began to approach more openly, some with cautious questions, others with admiration, and a few with tentative apologies for their earlier skepticism. Each interaction was a small step toward understanding, acceptance, and a new perspective on humanity. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest that went beyond excitement. She realized that leadership was not just about command or ceremony. It was about inspiring courage, fostering understanding, and creating spaces where truth and honesty could flourish. And with Ethan by her side, she felt capable of leading in a way that honored both tradition and progress. As the night drew on, the ballroom became a place of laughter, learning, and hope. Nobles shared stories, discussed ideas, and danced in ways that felt natural rather than forced. The human-princess connection had sparked something extraordinary. The realization that change was not only possible, but desirable. Lyra and Ethan moved together through the crowd, speaking to nobles, offering guidance, and simply being present. Each smile, each gentle word, each thoughtful gesture reinforced the truth that courage, empathy, and honesty could inspire even the most rigid hearts. By the end of the evening, the transformation was clear. The nobles, once rigid and fearful, had begun to embrace curiosity, admiration, and hope. Even Lord Xylar, though still hesitant, had begun to reconsider his assumptions about humans and the power of simple, genuine connection. Lyra stood at the center of the ballroom, looking around at the transformed scene. She felt a sense of pride, joy, and profound hope. Tonight, she said softly to Ethan, we have done something extraordinary. We have shown them that humans are not weak, that courage matters, and that connection can change hearts. Ethan smiled warmly. Yes, Lyra, and this is only the beginning. What we have started tonight will continue, growing stronger with each act of courage, each gesture of honesty, and each choice to see the truth. Lyra nodded. Then let us continue, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who will follow. This is our chance to create a new era, one where understanding, courage, and kindness lead the way. The ballroom, once a place of rigid tradition and expectation, now hummed with possibility. Nobles laughed, danced, and conversed freely, their eyes bright with curiosity and hope. The grand palace had witnessed something extraordinary. A princess who had found her voice, a human who had inspired courage, and a court beginning to see beyond fear and tradition. Lyra felt the night settle around her like a warm embrace. She had been lonely for so long, confined by expectation and duty. But tonight she had discovered something far more valuable: connection, trust, and the courage to live authentically. And beside her, Ethan stood as proof that even the most unexpected presence could spark transformation, inspire courage, and create hope. As the final notes of music faded into the night, the ballroom erupted in applause, not just for the princess or the human, but for the extraordinary possibility they had shown. That courage, honesty, and empathy could break even the oldest chains, and that a single act of understanding could ignite a new era. Lyra looked at Ethan, her heart full. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me this, for being here, for everything." Ethan took her hand gently, his eyes steady and kind. "No, Lyra," he said softly. "Thank you. You trusted me. You believed. And you allowed courage to guide your heart. That is the true power." The night had changed everything. The princess was no longer lonely. The human had proven that bravery and kindness could leave a lasting mark. And the court, once bound by fear and tradition, had glimpsed a future where differences were celebrated, courage was honored, and hearts could be united across worlds. As Lyra looked around the ballroom, she knew that this was only the beginning. Humans would be seen differently, traditions could evolve, and she herself would continue to lead with the courage, honesty, and heart she had discovered tonight. The grand palace of Zetheria had witnessed the birth of a new era, one where hope, courage, and connection transcended her, and the stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the endless black of space. Captain Elias Monroe leaned against the rail of the observation deck, his eyes tracing the trails of distant ships weaving through the galaxy. It had been years since humans first ventured beyond the Sol system. Yet even now, in the midst of a galaxy full of civilizations older than Earth itself, humans were still considered newcomers, and many of those civilizations had not yet learned to trust humans or to respect them. Elias sighed. He had spent years as Earth's ambassador, moving between worlds, trying to negotiate peace, trade agreements, and alliances. Humans were often underestimated, reckless, inexperienced, naive. But Elias knew better. Humans were adaptable, humans were brave, and humans had a certain stubbornness that sometimes turned the tide when all hope seemed lost. Tonight, however, he was not observing from afar. He was here for a meeting that would change everything. The grand hall of the Interstellar Council was unlike anything Elias had seen. Towering columns of polished alien metal stretched from floor to ceiling, and the air shimmered faintly with energy fields that kept gravity steady for the diverse species present. Council members from dozens of worlds had gathered, each representing powerful noble families. Their faces were serious, proud, and, Elias noted, cold. At the center of the room, standing alone on a raised platform, was Princess Liara. She was young, no more than 20 standard years, with hair that glimmered like sunlight on water, and eyes that seemed to see straight into one's soul. But her beauty and poise were not what drew Elias's attention. It was her courage. Liara's voice rang clear through the chamber. "My life has been threatened. Evidence shows a conspiracy within the Council itself. I ask for your support not for myself alone, but for the safety of the galaxy." A silence followed her words. It was heavy, almost suffocating. Then murmurs started, hesitation, doubt, thinly veiled fear. One by one, the nobles shook their heads, their voices polite but firm. "We cannot risk our families for the sake of one princess. Her claims are unproven. We cannot intervene. Peace is more important than her life." Elias felt his jaw tighten. He had expected hesitation. He had seen this many times before. But he had not expected the sheer, unflinching selfishness of it. These were the most powerful families in the galaxy, and they had all turned away. Liara's hands clenched at her sides, and for a moment, Elias thought she might break down. But she didn't. She stood taller, her voice rising, stronger than before. "If the Council will not act, I will find those who will. I will protect the innocent. I will not bow to fear." There was a stir among the Council members. Some whispered in disbelief, others in irritation, but no one offered real help. And in that moment, Elias knew something extraordinary had to happen. Humans had a saying, "When no one stands, stand yourself." Elias straightened. He stepped forward, catching the attention of the room. All eyes turned to him, the first human bold enough to speak up. "I will stand beside her." The chamber erupted. Some gasped, some laughed quietly, others exchanged shocked glances. A human? Standing for an alien princess? The audacity was almost humorous if it weren't so dangerous. Captain Monroe, one noble said sharply. "You do not understand the risks. You are new to this galaxy. Your people are inexperienced." Elias's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of certainty. "I understand perfectly, and I choose to act anyway. Courage is not measured by birthright or years in a council. It is measured by the willingness to stand when others turn away." Liara's eyes widened slightly, but then she nodded. A small, grateful smile appeared on her face, a rare expression for a princess who had faced betrayal too often. From that moment, an unspoken bond was formed. Two individuals from completely different worlds now shared a purpose: to protect what was right, even if the galaxy itself had abandoned them. The meeting ended in chaos. Guards whispered urgently, and the council dissolved into heated debates. Elias guided Liara to his ship, the Resolute, parked just outside the council chambers. It was modest compared to some of the massive star cruisers of the nobles, but it was fast, well-equipped, and, most importantly, ready for anything. As they boarded, Liara looked at Elias with cautious curiosity. "Why would a human risk everything for me?" Elias shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Because I've learned that the right choice is rarely the easy one, and because I've seen enough to know that someone must stand when others will not. Tonight it is you. Tomorrow it may be someone else, but if no one stands, nothing good will ever happen." Liara considered this. Her life had been surrounded by privilege, by protection, by rules that kept her safe, and yet here was a human, unknown and untested, offering his loyalty without hesitation. There was something inspiring about that. Something human. The Resolute lifted off smoothly, engines humming with controlled power. Stars blurred as they left the council's capital behind, a galaxy of possibilities opening before them. Their first destination, a distant star system rumored to harbor evidence of the conspiracy against Liara. But even as the engines roared, the danger was far from over. Space was not empty. Pirates, mercenaries, and spies operated in the shadows between stars. Elias had faced threats before, but the combined danger of politics, betrayal, and open hostility would test him in ways no Earth training could fully prepare him for. Liara walked to the observation deck, gazing at the endless sea of stars. "I have been trained to lead armies, to negotiate treaties, to survive court intrigue, but I have never faced someone who chooses to fight beside me without question." Elias joined her. "Then you're about to learn something about humans. We may be young in the galaxy, but we are stubborn, resourceful, and fearless when the cause is just. And when we stand together, there's little that can stop us." The princess let out a small laugh, the tension of the council fading, replaced by a glimmer of hope. "I suppose I am lucky to have a human as an ally," she said. "You're lucky," Elias replied, "because you'll see humans do more than stand. We find a way, always. The journey ahead would be perilous. Each new star system, each unknown planet, each shadow of betrayal would challenge them. But for the first time, Liara felt she was not alone. And for the first time, Elias felt that humans truly belonged among the stars, not as observers, but as participants, as heroes. The Resolute sped into the night, a small symbol of courage in a galaxy that had forgotten how to value bravery over status. Together, human and princess, they would face dangers no noble had the courage to confront. Together they would prove that loyalty, courage, and a steadfast heart could change the course of history. And somewhere in the dark expanse of space, among the distant lights of other civilizations, the galaxy began to notice that a new force had entered the stage. A force that would not bow, a force that would not turn away. Humanity had chosen to stand. Liara had found an ally, and the galaxy would never be the same.